Hello and welcome to Sideways. This week we're in lockdown and recording from the relative calm of our respective houses. Now the sound quality isn't the best, but this is hardly a time to prioritise style over substance. So in this episode we're talking about the points at which we stop and reflect on how far we've come, which makes Martin feel quite emotional. Milestones.
No, I said I was going to be 5 minutes late, and then I realised that you had joined the meeting prematurely. You know,
not prematurely.
In fact, very rudely, you'd joined the meeting before I had joined. It's like coming into my house when I've invited you round before I've even got home.
Well, it said on my screen here, it said waiting for the host to start meeting. I thought, well, some bloody host he is. Fine host. I'm angry already. You've got me started in these heightened emotional times.
I'm just looking out my window and I'm seeing a group of 4 people walking together. I might run outside and remonstrate with them.
Yeah, make it 5. That'll do the job.
I suppose they could be a family group. Are you allowed to go out in a group of 4 if you're a family?
Yeah, if you live together. Yeah, those are the rules at the moment, aren't they? I mean, you might hear in the back. Sorry, go on.
This is quite odd, isn't it? Because this is the first time that we've done one of these podcasts when we haven't been sat around my dining room table.
I know. I quite like this social distancing rule. I think it's excellent.
I like to be socially distanced from you, certainly.
Well, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. I mean, we're a couple of miles apart now, and that suits me fine. That should be the new rules: 2 miles.
Before we get started, it was interesting, wasn't it? Because there was that Facebook post yesterday that you joined in with, where someone had said this kind of isolating, social distancing is a bit like the Sundays from our childhood. And my sister had said that to me at the weekend. It's exactly right, isn't it? It's just like Sundays used to be. Nothing's happening.
It was. I know. I thought it was quite bizarre because it just reminded me of having to... I really didn't like Sundays when I had to stay indoors. I had to stay in the back garden. We weren't allowed out the front and go and play with their friends because it was Sunday.
Really?
And therefore it was disrespectful to make noise and upset the neighbours.
Well, you did live quite close to the church, so Jesus might have been quite affronted, mightn't he?
He would have been very upset by my behaviour sometimes. But so I just used to kick the football and knock on my parents' plants over. You know, it's their choice.
Was it a Sunday when Paul kicked his slipper over 2 gardens?
It was. No, I don't think it was because we wouldn't have been able to go and retrieve it then. We'd been banned from going around to someone else's house to retrieve it. So I think that was a summer holiday, I think, if I remember rightly.
Well, which were also long, lazy days with nothing much going on.
Yes, they were. They could be, couldn't they? That was spent mostly out the backfield playing football or going swimming. Yeah. That tended to be my summer holidays and avoiding doing any revision.
Or homework.
Jobs or homework or revision or anything like that, yeah.
Yeah, because you always had a project, didn't you, to do in the summer holidays, and you'd always be scrabbling to do it the last evening before you went back. Anyway, why are you getting on this subject? Why aren't you talking about what we're here to talk about? What is it we're here to talk about anyway?
I don't know. Well, can you hear? You might hear in the background there's some gunshots going off. You know, because I live up. Yeah, well, I live up by the barracks, don't I?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
And from time to time, they're out on the shooting range there or wherever they get up to over there. So perhaps they're getting ready for sort of dealing with the potential civil insurrection that's round the corner.
Yeah.
But so you might hear that in the background when we're doing this record. Are we recording at the moment?
I'm recording, yeah, because I wanted to record in case you said anything inappropriate because I want to get you on record.
Right.
You know,
okay.
I know that you can be a bit, loose-tongued.
No, not in front of the camera or on the recorder. Don't do it then.
So what are we talking about today?
What we're going to talk about, I want to talk about milestones.
Milestones?
Yeah, no, I don't mean just this sort of, the lump of stone at the side of the road that shows, it's engraved with the distance to the nearest town. But I was prompted to think about milestones by my youngest daughter, Lizzie, where she came round a couple of weekends ago to show me her first brand new car.
Oh,
yeah, which was really nice, and we started to chat about various milestones there.
Do you remember your first car?
Morris Marina, obviously.
Yeah, is that the one we went to Reading in?
We did go to Reading in it, yeah. I was surprised it made it to the end of the road, let alone get as far as Reading. But it was our first brand new car. I remember my first brand new car, which was it was a company car, and I remember that smell when you first get into it, etc. Yeah. But I thought it was a real milestone, and I said we did chat. We started to chat about different milestones, and we started to talk about different milestones in your life. Really, remember like your first day at school and your first date, I suppose, later on, and your first ciggy.
Yeah, I remember that. I definitely remember that. I can tell you the shop that I bought 10 number 6.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, I think my first cigarette was given to me. I wasn't brave enough to go and buy any. But, yeah, so this is little passages of time, aren't there? And I remember my first drink, which is, this has led to me to where I am today.
Do you remember your first drink then?
Not really my first drink per se, but I remember the first time I went into a pub and bought a drink, which was, the pub is still actually open, which is one of the few surviving in Maidstone that are still around.
Right, which pub?
Yeah, it was the Eagle.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Yeah, but it reminded me about the different milestones we're talking about, because there's loads in recovery, loads of different milestones.
Yeah.
Like you get the we've talked about it before, the sort of the fellowship or the AA mantra of one day at a time.
Yeah.
And it is a real milestone. But I think my first real milestone in recovery was actually going into the recovery hub.
Right.
Well, actually, no, probably before that. The first milestone was going and talking to the doctor about stuff, about how things were unravelling in my life.
So that was pretty helpful for you, wasn't he? Was it he?
Yeah, it was a he. Yes.
He was surprisingly understanding.
He was excellent, but so I remember that first time there, and the first day going into the recovery hub, and the first day at detox, and so my first day sober, which led on to my first week and then first month, etc. And I remember when I started to go to some AA meetings, and I remember getting my 4-month sober chip from them.
Chip?
Yeah, they give you a little coin, and I think it's
a coin.
What?
Like a casino coin.
Well, it's not really. It's more like a medal, if you like.
Oh yeah, medal. Okay, good.
You can call it what you like, but we call it chip. We call it a chip. So I remember keeping that 4-month sober chip in my pocket with me for months afterwards. I was really proud of it. Yeah. I didn't actually go back to some AA meetings after that to collect any further ones, but because I went a slightly different route. But I remember that was quite momentous. And I think my own recovery has given me sort of many momentous moments and milestones. And I think probably one of the most emotional ones was being around to see the birth of my first grandson, or my only grandson to date.
Oh,
yeah. Do you know? I remember being really emotional when Emily, my eldest daughter, told me that she was pregnant, and I remember telling her at the time that was a real milestone in her life, and very much in mine as well. And I remember being really thankful for my recovery at that time, that I was able to be around to witness such a fantastic event. Because I really never thought I didn't think I was ever going to be around to see that day.
No, I think I can remember you telling me that. I think I can remember you saying to me that, if someone had said to you, a few years ago that you'd still be around to see the birth of your first grandchild, you would have probably laughed in their face.
Well, I wasn't doing much laughing at the time, probably, but I'd have disagreed with their opinion. Yeah, for sure. But it was a sort of like I don't know what it's called, but it's almost like a joint milestone, but almost like a reflective milestone as well. I don't know if there's such a phrase, but I know we've talked in the past about different types of self-esteem, and one of them being reflective self-esteem. And it made me think about it like a reflective milestone, when you're sort of almost piggybacking on other people's milestones. Like my daughter's events, the 2 events I've talked about recently.
How do you mean? When you say you feel like you're kind of piggybacking on them, can you unpack that a little bit? Like that.
Yeah. I suppose it's almost like it's their personal milestone, but I've sort of, I don't know if not barged in on it, but I've sort of joined in with it, if you like. And it's
aren't you part of it anyway? I mean, you're their father.
I think so. Yeah, and it's the sort of thing we we try and pass on in groups. I always felt very comfortable. I loved sitting around with people that had passed certain milestones. They'd done 6 months sober or a year sober. And I found that, I reflected upon that, or I got some strength from their milestones, if you like. Even though there was no milestone for me at that point, it was nice being around them because I could see that it was possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the recognition that people can do something that you might think is beyond you is a reminder to you that you can. But there is another, can I ask you another question? I want to ask you a question about milestones.
Go on.
This is something we've spoken about before, and I suppose it's kind of the other side of milestones. You may have it on your extensive notes. I imagine you have got extensive notes, even though I can't see them.
You can see my face, but you can't see. Can you see me looking down, glancing down at my notes?
I can, yeah. I prefer it when I don't have to see your face and I can just see your notes. I wanted to ask you about milestones. We've spoken before about the danger sometimes of milestones in recovery. Like your 12-month anniversary. I will come on to that. It is further on down in my notes. And I'm starting to get tired of you of knowing what I'm going to be saying next. We obviously know each other too well, and it's starting to worry me. Because I'll tell you what. I'm going to break a rule here. I'm going to go on to that part of my notes. No. I wouldn't want you to, because I know that'll make you feel. Uncomfortable.
Well, you see, luckily, sitting at home rather than around your dining room table, I'm sitting at my desk, and I've got lots of pens and pencils that I can tap. Okay, which releases a bit of my tension. I know it really annoys the hell out of you, so I can do this with complete impunity. But anyway, I get joy from seeing the recoverers around me reaching their milestones. But going on to what you were saying, there can be a bit of a dark side to it in recovery as well. I'll go into it a little bit more because I've got some other episodes on the drawing board at the moment about relapse and relapse prevention and that sort of thing. So I don't want to go too far into it at that point. But there does seem to be a definite problem reaching certain stages of recovery that I've seen recurring often. And that does seem to be about, well, I suppose it's different for everyone, but generally it seems to be the 1 month, 3 months, 6 months and 12 months. Just those particular ones seem to throw up
months as well.
I know it seems to be linked with a sort of a definite change in attitude when these points are reached around the thought. I think it mainly boils down to the thought of being, in inverted commas, cured, as it were.
I've heard people say that to me. They said, "Oh, well, I haven't had a drink for 3 months. Maybe I'm cured." That's not very helpful thinking.
It's very unhelpful thinking. Or they think, well, I think often what it is, it's not perhaps that they're cured, but I'm saying they. I mean, I had these same thoughts myself. Was perhaps I'm not an alcoholic after all.
Oh, tell me about that. That's fascinating.
If I can do a month clean, perhaps I didn't have a drink problem after all. It's been a bit rough and it's been a bit painful, but perhaps I'm all right. Perhaps I can go back to social drinking. And that thought it crops up from time to time, and it crops up at certain times I've found during the first year. Because we've talked about in the past about this sort of pink fluffy cloud, which you get as soon as you go into recovery. After the first 2 or 3 days, or perhaps towards the end of the first week, when your meds are finishing that stop your withdrawal symptoms, you start to get this pink fluffy cloud, and that because you feel everything is right in the world all of a sudden, everything is starting to become clearer, and that can last up to, it tends to be between 4 to 6 weeks, and it's when that pink cloud starts to come to an end and reality starts to kick in. Recovery starts. We find it sort of, we feel it starts to plateau out a little bit at that point. And
so do you think then when that pink fluffy cloud disperses, is that when you've kind of reached the point where you're being reminded that actually a sober life also has its challenges and problems?
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah, I couldn't have put it better myself. I think because your emotions have started to return and life's realities are starting to hit home a little bit, and so it can be a really dangerous time.
Yeah.
It's and we and that comes along from time to time, and people often mention it in groups, and we always say that this is normal. This is normal part of recovery. You do hit these plateaus from time to time. You
What
do
do you
hit
think?
the.
Sorry, go on.
No, go on. No, you were going to say something. I can probably know what you're going to ask me, but ask me anyway.
What I was going to ask you was, I'm wondering how, if someone in group says, I've been 3 months sober, 6 months sober, whatever, maybe I'm not an alcoholic. I mean, what would the response of the group be to someone who is in that kind of mind space?
Oh yeah. It was a slightly different question than I thought you were going to ask me there, so I'm not as clever as I thought there. Yeah, but it's fairly easy to counteract it or to talk them through that. This is a condition we've got. The reason they're sitting in the room with us at that moment is because they have a problem with their drinking or drug taking, and we know from experience that it isn't something that you can just take lightly, and it is something you've got to work on the whole time. And so when we get to those points, we tend to say, well, this is the time that you've got to push on from here. It is right. You're going to the next stage of your recovery, and you've got to recycle some of the work and some of the lessons you've learned in the past, but start to learn new lessons as well. We try and get people more involved at that point. I think we try and, after people have been 3 months sober, we invite them, if they want to start to co-facilitate in some of the groups. And then after 6 months sober, to actually, start to facilitate and run their own groups, which, for me, I remember that happening to me when I first started to run my own groups. It tremendously helped me. All of a sudden, it gave me a sense of self-worth again. And it pushed my recovery on tenfold. It really did. So when anyone starts to reach that plateau, we start to talk about what the next steps are.
But aren't there also, I guess there might also be a risk that co-facilitating and then facilitating groups might create stress and anxiety in people, which actually puts their recovery under pressure. Is that
exactly. Right? Very much so. I mean, we tend to wait for people to ask us if they want to do it. And we put it out there that this is available, and then wait for people to say, do you know what, I quite fancy a go at that. And it was exactly how it was put to me when I was first in recovery. I remember someone saying to me, I'll tell you what, I think you've, from the way you're grasping stuff and the way things are going, it might be something you'd like to consider at some point, and left it at that. And then, after thinking about it for a while, being asked or just having it mentioned to me meant a great deal. It really did. And so I was then sort of quite keen when I felt the time was right for me. But you're absolutely right. We don't we monitor people quite closely at that point, because we have had situations where the thought of doing it is quite good, but the reality of running groups and the pressure that can bring can be counterproductive. Sorry?
I've got another question.
Go on then.
Do you know what this one is?
No, I don't. I can see you sort of writing notes or something there, which is most unusual for you, unless you're doing something else totally unrelated. Doing something like that.
I could be sketching, couldn't I?
You could be. Yeah.
Unlikely.
Go on then.
I forgot what my question is now. Oh, I know what it is. I'm wondering, because it must have happened. In fact, I'm pretty sure it has happened, because I think we spoke about it. But it must have quite a profound impact on the group if someone who is a facilitator or a co-facilitator lapses.
Yeah, it does. Which is why you have to be quite careful. Which is why we don't go willy-nilly putting groups on, when there's potential volunteers available.
Yeah.
We do take it pretty slowly, because we know that it can have an impact. Yeah. But that can happen. That can happen whether they're facilitating or not. If someone that just comes on to groups and suddenly falls away when you don't expect it, it can have an impact. And so you sort of rally the troops at that point. Yeah, very much so, and talk to them about the situation, and try and learn from the lessons of and people come into groups after they've lapsed, and we talk about it, what happened, why it happened, etc. And so I think each lapse is a potential for learning, not just for the person themselves, but for everyone else in the group. So if you try and sort it out like that and set it up like that, I think it can have, it does have a negative effect, but it can be counteracted by some of the positivity around the discussions that follow. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah, it wasn't on my notes there. I was freestyling then, and I thought I was very good.
I'll let you get back to your notes.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit tricky. My notes are at a slightly different angle that I'm used to when I'm sitting at your table. But
oh dear.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, because do you remember? I remember us talking before about these plateaus that you can get in recovery, where I've always seen them as sort of like a base camp, all right, if you're stopping off on the way up the mountain. And I remember you talking to me about it's a time for reflection. You called him I think it was the Gestalt period or the fertile void. Do you remember talking to me about that?
I do. The fertile void is a concept that exists in Gestalt therapy, yeah. Okay.
Do you want to expand on that a little bit? Because I think...
Yeah, in essence, it refers to, as humans, we're used to getting to the end of one thing and then starting the next thing immediately. We're in a state of continuous forward movement. And the fertile void refers to the space between the end of one thing and the beginning of something else. So that could be something, it could be the end of drinking and, the beginning of sobriety. It could be the end of a relationship and, the beginning of being alone or a new relationship or whatever. But they're kind of life stages. And the reason it's important is because sometimes it's very uncomfortable to be in that space where you feel like you don't know what you're doing and where you don't know where you're going next and you feel like you're just drifting. Yeah. But the reason it's fertile is that if you can tolerate the discomfort of sitting in that space, quite often you allow things to settle to the extent that you have a clearer idea of where you want to go next. Does that make sense?
Absolutely perfect sense. And that's the my understanding and has been correct. Because I've used that phrase quite a lot in groups over the years. In fact, when I used to say fertile void, people would listen to what I was saying. When I was explaining pretty much what you were saying there, and I remember I started to use it perhaps a little bit too often, and people started to take the piss. They used to call me Mr. Fertile Void and all that. I used to laugh and I used to say it. So if there's new people coming into the groups, I could hear them. I could see them sort of listening to what I was saying, and other people were mocking me. It's a disgrace.
You see, were there kind of raised eyebrows when you used the phrase?
Yeah, I did, yeah. So, but I joined in the fun in the end. I used to take the mickey out myself for saying it. But I think
it is difficult. I think we underestimate the difficulty that there is in sitting with nothingness, no movement. I mean, I've worked with a lot of people over the years who, for example, can't tolerate silence. Can't tolerate hearing the ticking of a clock because there's something there about their consciousness of time passing and they don't really know what they're doing with it. They don't know where they're going. They don't know where they're headed next. So that sort of insatiable appetite to always be kind of moving forward, doing something, by definition means that quite often we'll be moving in directions that we haven't really thought through.
Makes sense.
The fertile void enables us to, take stock, think a little bit more clearly about what next.
And I think it's a really important point. And the reason that I used it a lot in groups, and I still do, because it's definitely a positive spin on these little plateaus that we reach at these certain points in their recovery. And I think absolute milestones, which going back to our original concept, we've gone slightly off topic, I think, but I'm roughly in line with my notes, so I'm not too bothered about that. But I find also that the 1 year mark, when you really think you've cracked it, all right, so you've been sober for a year, and you can then, what I found then, the reason that there's potential for lapse at that point is because complacency really does kick in.
Right.
I think after you've done a year, because I remember when I first started to go to meetings and I was saying, everyone was telling me, just take one day at a time, take it slowly. And the addict in me was saying, no, I don't want that. I set my goal out right from the start to do a year and see how I felt then. And everyone, I got into terrible trouble. And you're setting yourself up for failure and everything's going to go wrong. But it was always in the back of my mind, if I can do a year, I think I'm going to be in control. I'm going to be back in control of my life. I'm going to be in control of this condition I've got around me.
Why was that? Just, I mean, it might sound like a kind of stupid question, but why was that? You know, the words you used there were, I wanted to do a year, and then I can't remember exactly what you said, but the inference was, I'll see where I am then.
See how I felt.
Well, what does that actually mean? Did you think at that point, was there a part of you that thought, if I can do a year, then, you know, maybe I can go back to social drinking?
Yeah, there was some of that in there, definitely. There was some of that. I thought, well, if I can do a year, then I've taken a year out. Yeah, perhaps, you know, I'm going to be okay. But I would also I'd started to listen to other people at that point that said, and people had said to me, and I still say it to other people now, that once you've got through that first year, you've gone through some of the trickiest moments that potentially could trip you up. So you've gone through Christmas, for example, and New Year, which we know is a difficult time. You've gone through different, anniversaries of bereavements, for example, and so and your own birthdays and other people's birthdays, etc. And the sort of summertime where there's barbecues. So you've gone through the period where there's an awful. You've gone through the whole routine once, and hopefully, you know, or second time around, it's going to be a lot easier. And so when people would talk to me about this year, I thought, yeah, that's what I want to do. But I did think, and then I sort of said to other people in groups, you know, as I was coming up to the year, do you know, I feel differently now than when I first said that a year ago, and I was hoping that was going to be the case. So I got to a year and thought, do you know what, this is so much better than my previous life. I'm just going to crack on from here. I remember other people saying to me, you know, you've talked about your year in the past. I know you were told off for it, and that's what have you got any more goals now? I said, no, not really, but I think what I'll do, I'll probably wait till I'm 65 and see how I feel then. All right. And then I suppose, you know, when I do reach 65, you know, I'll just push it on to 75 or whatever, if I'm still around.
So do you think that in recovery it's important to constantly have something to aim for?
Yeah, not particularly. I'm not in that respect. I think I was going against the sort of general rules about, you know, living in the day. But I still do live in the day. You know, I still go to bed each night and put my head on the pillow and think, that's another day sober. That joy still doesn't leave me. You know, all these years down the line, and waking up sober is still great.
So you know, as you kind of roll back as you roll through the years, and you do another year sober, does every year still feel as good as the last one, or does it feel even better?
Yes, I think it gets better. It does get better, and only because the cravings have sort of long since subsided into the past. But I think, you know, I get my real joy from helping my fellow addicts now, and so each year that I do, I'd like to think that I can give the message across to people with more, I suppose, authenticity that, you know, this is a condition that we can live with.
So that also echoes something from what you were saying earlier about feeling as if you were basking in some sort of reflected glory of other people's milestones, because that's really why I asked you the question, why you felt that you were, you know, the impression you gave there was that you're almost kind of an outlier hanging on the coattails of someone else's milestone. But to me, your feeling of wanting to enjoy other people's milestones is an indication that your life has become about something much broader than you. And, you know, that's what we want for our lives. You know, if our lives are just about us, which of course they are in addiction, then life is going to be dissatisfying. You can't really get any great joy from your life if your life is only about you. It has to also be about the impact you have on other people. So
I think that's very fair.
The fact that you enjoy seeing other people's milestones and you get something from those, you know, says a lot about your recovery.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think, you know, what you said, I think it's quite philosophically sound. And it's still that joy never leaves me. And each person that comes along, each person that I see reach their own little personal milestones of doing a week sober and then a month sober. And I think it's seeing the change in not only physically but mentally, and seeing that change is a real joy, and it makes every effort that I put into to help to run this charity and to run the groups, etc., makes every moment worthwhile. When I see someone start to brighten up, it's a real joy, and that is a change. That's been a real change to me, and I've never had that. I suppose I've never had the opportunity to have that input into other people's lives to make them feel better. And so, I don't think that's going to ever. That joy will never dissipate. That'll always be there. I'm feeling quite emotional now, actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been a different experience, mate. It really has.
Yeah. Well, change is as good as a rest, isn't it?
It is, and I look forward
to invention, necessity. Isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, necessity. And I think I look forward to hearing how this one edits down and how it comes out and the voice quality, etc. It'd be interesting to see.
I'll do my best with it. I can do no more in these trying times.
No, they are trying times as well. And we're sort of, this won't be going out for about 3 weeks. I
expect we'll still be in our houses, won't we?
We'll still be in lockdown. So good luck to everyone out there over the last 3 weeks since to the point we're hearing this now. But it's been quite testing, and for addicts and isolation, they're not happy bedfellows. So everyone that's out there listening to it, and all my fellow addicts, stay strong, my friends.
Right. Okay. So I'll virtually see you next week.
Virtually.
All right.
I'm happy with that.
See you later.
Take care then.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Sideways was created by Graham Landy and Martin Pankhurst. If you want to read more about our work, visit grahamlandywellbeing.co.uk/sideways. You can also follow us on Twitter, and you can email us to let us know what you think of the show and with any questions that you have. And finally, we want to thank you for listening and ask that if you've enjoyed what you've heard, that you spread the word. And we'll see you next week.